All right,
So I
great.
think we'll do the rest. Dr. Lighton, that comma 2, does it have the provision for transcription?
Um, well, it's a paid for feature, but I can try and check. It shouldn't be a problem. I think it
Okay.
does transcribe and summarize as well for each presentation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think that would be more helpful for us to help us with the issues of minutes.
Right.
Mhm. Okay. So, Dr. Mkerewa, it's 9:35. Over to you. The HOD will give us just some opening remarks, and then we can proceed with Mr. Chibesa and the rest of the students who follow through. Those that will not be present, will just bypass them. It means they just fall off, in my opinion. I don't know whether there will be provision for them in the future, but I think the schedule was shared. So Dr. Mkerewa, over to you. The presentation, I think, will be 10 minutes. 5 minutes, we just do those interactions. If we need more time, I think we can agree, or we can take those discussions outside the meeting. But over to you, Dr. Mkerewa, and then that way you can pick it up immediately. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Professor Piri, and welcome to everyone, and also Dr. Lighton. I saw that Clay was here, but maybe he dropped out. But I'd like to welcome everyone, especially our master students. This is an important milestone in your studies. You've been learning for about a year, and now you're entering the second phase of your studies, which is the final stage, to present some research, or at least to do some research project. So, as I mentioned to some of you, during our class, that this is a bit more than what you did at your bachelor level, where you just do some programming project, because we're trying to assess whether you're able to think like a computer scientist and you can reason about a problem and develop something out of it. Here, you want to go a bit further and actually show some research level skills, that you can ask important questions and you come up with proper methods of how to answer those questions, and then you're able to analyze things and be able to present your findings to the public. So in this phase, you're going to go through different things. And the very first thing is that you have to give us this proposal, which is what you'll be doing. And these proposals, depending on how the discussions go, once they are approved, they have to go to the school. The school is the one that is going to give a final say whether your proposals make sense or not. But as it is, like I said, that we have to be convinced, first of all, as a department, that this is worth it, and then we'll present that to the school, and then the school gives a final say. And after that, there'll be other things that you have to start doing, like giving a presentation. There's a seminar week that is organized by the school, where different students from different departments like physics, mathematics, biology, chemistry, and so forth, they're all presenting their research, and you also be part of that. So part of being a researcher is not just you working alone and doing your stuff, but you also have to be ready to present what it is that you're doing. Even if it's something that is very complex, you have to be able to present it in a simpler way to a general audience. Of course, it's an audience of scientists, yes, but from different fields. So not everybody may know computer science. That is one thing that you have to do. And of course, finally, you'll be working with your supervisor. With you do your thesis. So one thing I'd like to advise is, from the very beginning, be more proactive. Don't wait. Sometimes the supervisors are having many students. Like Professor Pira has a lot of students, both at bachelor, PhD, and masters. So if you want him to be every time pushing you, and okay, can you have a meeting like this? Of course, he might push you if he sees that you're not doing anything. But as a student, you have to be proactive, so that you arrange for meetings, you're signing off on those meetings that you're having with supervisors, and then you'll be able to finish on time. So I believe that you are self-organizing. This is why some of you are probably working in industry already, and we hope that you can do the same. So you're welcome to this first meeting, which is where you're going to present your proposals. You will get feedback The feedback might be aggressive. It's for own good. If somebody tells you to say, okay, but what about this and what about that? It's not that we hate you or that somebody has an issue with you. We're just trying to make sure that what you're going to do is actually relevant and it's something that will be accepted by the school. Because at the school, we can present your proposal, but other professors, other doctors are going to look at the worthiness of your research. So this is why this is a very important stage for you to do this in this, and everybody who's going to take part. I close my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So now I believe we can have the first presentation. Prof said Chibesa.
Now you can share your screen and then you can proceed. You have 10 minutes. And then Moses, I don't know whether he's around. He will go on next. And then Malaizio. Dr. Lighton PD, I haven't seen the student. If we can just call him on the side so that he gets ready, and then we'll see so be last for the first batch.
Yeah.
Then we'll proceed on the other side.
Can you hear me, Prof?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So on the issue of Malaysia, I've spoken to Dr. Nyirenda. You may not be aware, but Malaysia only enrolled into the program in August, so during the August intake. And so Dr. Nyirenda insisted that it was probably not going to be a good idea for him to present. So in as much as we had started to prepare, we told him to put things on hold. It's unfortunate that I think Dr. Nyirenda did not get the opportunity to speak to you about this, but Malaysia will not be presenting. Apologies for communicating if the communication did not come through to you.
Okay, maybe we can talk about this on the side, but what it means is that it means the research proposal will not be registered this academic year, and it means you can't proceed to do research.
Okay.
That's the only part that we need to deal with, because we need to take this for approval to the school.
Right.
Okay, so we can discuss this on the side so that we find a better way of getting around them. Okay. Chibesa, you have 10 minutes. You can put the slides in the presentation mode and proceed.
Thank you. Is what I've shared are people able to see what I've shared?
Yes,
Hello?
we can see it.
Okay.
We can see your screen, yes.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Chibesa Ndao, and I'm going to
Can you put it in sorry, Mr. Ndao. Can you put it in the presentation mode? Like
from my
so you see
end.
the full screen.
From my end, it's in presentation mode.
Then maybe you're sharing a different screen. So share the one that is showing the presentation mode.
Sorry, just a minute. Is there any improvement?
No, it's still showing the same
because
one.
I have to go out of the presentation mode to go back to, because I have to stop sharing and go out of this to go and share it again. So I'm unable to do presentation first before sharing.
Why don't you share the entire screen then of your laptop? Yeah, just pick the entire screen and then we'll be able to see.
Are we okay now?
We can't see your screen yet. Maybe it's coming. I don't know. Did you pick entire screen?
Okay, I've done that.
Okay, yes. Now we can see the presentation mode.
Okay, thank you once again. So, Mchwesandawa, I'm going to present my proposal, and my research topic is computer-aided diagnosis of silicosis and pulmonary tuberculosis in chest radiographs among Zambian miners using machine learning. So that will be the outline of my presentation, and I'll go straight to the introduction.
Sorry, one more thing. Just move that small pop-up that says stop sharing. Just drag it somewhere up so that it doesn't hide. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's my outline, and I'll go straight to the introduction. So the advent of modern computers paved the way for computer-aided diagnosis, abbreviated as CAD, and CAD systems help doctors or assist physicians interpreting medical images, and in other words, they provide a second opinion to physicians. So it is in contrast with automated diagnosis, where a system replaces a physician. So several CAD systems have since been developed for analyzing the chest, brain, heart, colon, kidney, among many other organs, based upon conventional projection radiography, ultrasound, computer tomography, and magnetic resonance imaging. So in medical image classification, researchers have developed CAD systems based on classical, traditional machine learning, and deep learning methods. So deep learning-based convolutional neural networks have outperformed traditional machine learning methods on conventional image recognition tasks, and various CNN models such as VG16, AlexNet, and others have since been developed. But despite their successes, these CNNs suffer from one problem in that they cannot explain the hierarchical and positional relationship between features extracted from images. And for this reason, Saba et al. Recently proposed capsule networks, which are inspired by the mechanism of human visual cortex and inverse graphics. And research shows that they possess all inclinations to supersede CNNs in modern computer vision research. So mining is important in Zambia and is likely to continue to be so in future. This sector employs approximately 90,000 people, or 8.3% of the total population. Unfortunately, mining activities expose workers to silica dust, the inhalation of which leads to a lung disease called silicosis. This silicosis, together with asbestosis and co-workers pneumoconiosis, are collectively referred to as pneumoconiosis. And in this presentation, we are going to use these terms interchangeably. Additionally, mine workers tend to work in enclosed areas with poor ventilation, and that creates favorable environments for pulmonary tuberculosis transmission. So the current criteria for interpreting chest radiographs for pneumoconiosis were compiled by the International Labour Organization. As is certified by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, based in the US. So physicians certified by NIOSH are called B readers, while those that have attended the certification course without necessarily passing or sitting for exams are called A readers. So in Zambia currently there is no certified B reader, but we have a few A readers, most of whom are found at the Occupational Health and Safety Institute, which is a statutory body with a sole mandate of screening and certifying pneumoconiosis for compensation purposes. A few others are dotted around. You can find some at UTH and Keto Teaching Hospital, among others. So miners and ex-miners are screened annually at OHSI for pneumoconiosis or silicosis. And since they are screened annually, any health issue that arises before their due date for screening, for any issue, they visit any other local health facility. And this leads to many cases of silicosis being misdiagnosed as pulmonary tuberculosis, owing to the similarity of clinical and radiological presentation of the two conditions. The misdiagnosis leads to non-reporting of silicosis cases, which consequently deprives minors and ex-minors of suitable medical treatment and advice. And further, since silicosis is a compensable occupational disease, any lack or delays in its reporting deprives the workers in question of their compensation benefits. To help alleviate the situation, card-based systems, card systems that are based on CNNs and capsule networks can come in handy. And thus this research seeks to contribute to the field of medical image classification by developing models based on the two deep learning algorithms to help physicians in diagnosis of silicosis and pulmonary tuberculosis using chest radiographs. Statement of a problem. So the similarity of a clinical and radiological presentation of silicosis and pulmonary tuberculosis makes it difficult for most physicians to correctly diagnose silicosis. This misdiagnosis leads to unnecessary TB treatment and delayed diagnosis of silicosis. And this further leads to non-reporting of silicosis cases, and this consequently deprives minors and ex-minors of suitable medical treatment and advice, as well as compensation. So this research seeks the development and application of deep learning techniques to implement a solution that will help distinguish between silicosis and PTB using chest radiographs classification. The aim of this study is to build deep learning models based on CNNs and capsule networks algorithms to address the current challenges of misdiagnosis between silicosis and PTB faced by many physicians during medical examinations for minors and ex-minors in Zambia. The research has three objectives. The first one is to determine the factors that affect physicians' diagnosis of silicosis and PTB using chest radiographs when medical examining minors and ex-minors in Zambia. 2, to develop deep learning-based models that can classify silicosis and PTB using CNNs and CAPSNet algorithms. And 3, to develop a prototype of a models in 2 in order to validate the model's classification of silicosis and PTB. So in this research, we shall ask 3 questions. The first of which is, what factors affect physicians' diagnosis of silicosis and PTB using chest radiographs when medical examining minors and ex-minors in Zambia? The second one will be, how can deep learning models be used in the classification of silicosis and PTB using chest radiographs? And the third one will be, how effective is a prototype in validating the model's classifications of silicosis and PTB? So this research will greatly assist physicians in the diagnosis of TB and silicosis using just chest radiographs. And the radiograph classification from the models may be used as a second opinion or supporting information in the physician's decision-making process. The study also presents an opportunity for other researchers to benefit from the findings of a 3-class classification of normal, TB, and silicosis images using CNNs and the recently proposed capsule networks. Literature review. This is just a summary of the many papers that we looked at. The first one is an article titled Computerized Classification of Pneumoconiosis on Digital Chest Radiography Artificial Neural Networks with 3 Stages, authored by Okumura et al. In 2017. The findings were that 3-stage artificial neural networks for classification showed highest performance with an area under the curve value of 89%. This was in comparison to single neural networks. And the gaps are, this was just a 2-class classification between normal and pneumoconiosis positive. It didn't look at TB and pneumoconiosis together. The second one was a screening system for the assessment of opacity profusion in chest radiographs of minors with pneumoconiosis, authored by Patikis et al. In 2002. And the findings were that when they compared several classifiers, the backward propagation classifier outperformed the SOM, KNN, and RBF classifiers with an accuracy of 75% in screening chest radiographs. And this too was just a 2-class classification, looking at normal and pneumoconiosis only, without TB. The third one was the automatic detection of tuberculosis-related abnormalities in chest X-ray images using hierarchical feature extraction schemes, authored by Chandra et al. In 2020. And the findings were that using a support vector machine for PTB classification using shape and texture features, obtained an accuracy value of 95.6% in the detection of tuberculosis from chest X-ray images. This too was a two-class classification between normal and TB images. It didn't look at pneumoconiosis at the same time. The fourth one was a deep learning-based automatic detection of tuberculosis disease in chest X-ray images, authored by Shokashan et al. In 2022. And the finding was that transfer learning-based models that were pre-trained had outperformed a CNN model that the authors had developed from scratch. Whereas, and this showed that what they had trained from scratch achieved an accuracy of 87% in TB detection, as opposed to the pre-trained ones, which had achieved up to 90%. This too was a two-class classification between normal and TB images. The fifth article we looked at was a detection of tuberculosis from chest X-ray images, boosting the performance with vision transformer and transfer learning, authored by Duong et al. In 2021. And the findings were that the hybrid model between pre-trained efficient net trained on ImageNet dataset and the pre-trained vision transformer showed good results with an accuracy and an area under the curve result of 97.72% and 100% respectively. This outperformed considered baselines on different quality metrics. This was a three-class classification looking at normal, TB, and pneumonia images, but it didn't look at TB and pneumoconiosis at the same time. The sixth one was a pneumoconiosis computer-aided diagnosis system based on X-rays and deep learning, authored by Yang et al. In 2021, and the results was that the transfer learning approach using the pre-trained ResNet34 model on extracted lung regions using the UNet algorithm had achieved an accuracy of 92.46% in detecting pneumoconiosis. This was a two-class classification between normal and pneumoconiosis images. The seventh one was a deep learning-based model for screening and staging pneumoconiosis, authored by Zhang et al. In 2021, and the findings were that the CNN model trained from scratch had achieved an accuracy of 92.7% and outperformed two groups of radiologists who scored 87% and 84% respectively. This was also a two-class classification between normal and pneumoconiosis images. The eighth one was a detection and visualization of pneumoconiosis using an ensemble of multi-dimensional deep features learned from chest X-rays, authored by Devnath et al. In 2022. And the findings were that the ensemble learning using 9 machine learning classifiers and multi-dimensional deep features extracted using CheXNet 121 architecture exhibited promising results, yielding an accuracy of 92.6% as compared to individual classifiers. This was also a two-class classification.
Chibesa, I need to summarize in the next 5 minutes.
Noted, Doc. The last three articles we are looking at the newly proposed capsule network algorithms. The first one was dynamic routing between capsules, authored by Saba et al. In 2017. And the findings are that a discriminatively trained multi-layer capsule system achieves state-of-the-art performance on the MNIST database that is considerably better and a convolutional neural network at recognizing highly overlapping digits. And the gap was that the study was done on a dataset of images or digits or numbers. This was for handwriting recognition. This was not done on medical images. The next one was capsule networks against medical imaging data challenges, authored by Jimenez, Sanchez et al. In 2018, and the findings were that in view of the common dataset constraints of medical image analysis, namely small amounts of annotated data and class imbalance, capsule networks could be trained with less amounts of data for the same or better performance in comparison with CNNs. This study was based on handwriting and close recognition, which are non-medical, as well as mitosis detection and diabetic retinopathy detection, which are medical datasets. But these are different from what we want to look at, which are lung images. The last one was enhanced capsule network for medical image classification, offered by Zhang et al. In 2020. And the findings were that experimental results show that it could obtain good performance for medical image classification tasks providing good inspiration for other image classification tasks. And the gaps that we saw were that the study was based on the PCAM dataset of histopathological scans of lymph node sections. And this was not looking at the lung images that we intend to look at. So our proposed methodology is that we shall conduct a descriptive study on the factors that affect physicians' interpretation of chest radiographs for silicosis and TB. Then we shall collect image data and create training, testing, and validation data sets. Silicosis images will be collected from IHSI, whereas PTB images will be collected both from IHSI as well as from other public available data sets. Silicosis images, we haven't found any data set that is publicly available. Then we shall develop the two models using the PyTorch framework. That is our proposed timeline and our proposed budget. And those are the references. They are in 4 pages. The last 2 sets, I'm still reformatting them to IEEE format because I learned of this quite late. This is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chibesa. Dr. Piri, you can go first, and then Dr. Mkeleba will follow through.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. The very first question, right, that I think we should ask here, because it's not immediately clear from your presentation, is tied to the fact that if you compare yourself, you and a few others, I guess, to the other master's students, the type of masters they're doing is different, right? What you're working towards is a thesis, not as a dissertation. There's a fundamental difference there. The difference is that you are supposed to explicitly state the novelty of what you're doing, what exactly it is you're bringing onto the table. That's why it's called a thesis, right? It's a tenet. I don't know if we've done a bit of thinking about that. I imagine when this thing goes to the school, these are questions that they're going to ask, or they're going to probably look at. But even if it passes through there at the end of it, or it's something that has to be explicitly stated in your thesis. So I'm not sure if you're able to tell us what is so novel about what you're doing. That's the first question. And then the other question is tied to your approach, right? So the solution that you're proposing, is there a reason why we're focusing on classification? Have we in fact looked at other alternative techniques, right? So if you look at the reported textbook classic techniques associated with what you're doing, there's things like detection. In addition to classification, there's detection, there's localization, and there's segmentation. Is there a reason why you are looking at classification? And then I also have a question related to, is it research question number 1 or specific number 1? Yeah. There's mentioned that you're going to look at, is it the factors that affect physicians' diagnosis? The question I have is, if you're looking at factors that affect somebody's diagnosis, I mean, this could be, maybe I don't have the required training, right? You classify it, is it those two different physicians? Is it A and B or something? Are those the things that you're looking into? My expectation is that these factors would be really aligned with the pathology that you're looking at, right? So this detection that you're working towards in is it specific objective number 2? So I don't know if you can clarify on what you exactly mean by factors that affect physician diagnosis, because this could be anything, right? It could be my experience. It could be a fact that I don't have required training. Is this in fact what you're referring to? And then you raised an important point where you're saying you haven't been able to find a silicosis data set. Is there in fact a plan? Because if the data set is not there, it's probably something that we need to carefully think about. And in fact, this might be a blessing in disguise, because if there isn't a data set available, we could probably argue that one of the contributions to what you're doing is going to be the development of this publicly available silicosis data set. But if there's no data set, what plan do we have? Yeah. So I think that would be it for now, I think. But also maybe just to, not that this is a question, but just to remind us that we are working in a very sensitive area. We want to make sure that we are doing the right things in terms of ethics. A reminder that your ethical clearance approval from the school is not going to be sufficient. So you will want to make sure that you get ethical clearance approval, obviously, from there's the National Health Research Authority, and of course, I mean, you're going to have to also get permission from the Minister of Health, I believe. But anyway, that's that from me. If you can address some of the issues that I just raised. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. So the issue of
is it just me, or I couldn't get him?
Hello?
Yeah, I was
Hello?
actually also thinking that maybe it's my network. We can hear you now.
Okay. So the way I was looking at novelty, the issue is twofold. One is a practical scenario among physicians. The fact that this problem exists of the misdiagnosis, and we haven't been able to find any research work that looks at TB and silicosis at the same time. So from a practical perspective, it will bring in something helpful to the physicians. And the second one is on the use of capsule networks, because those who develop the capsule networks and the few research work that has been done shows that these are possessing no inclination to surpass CNNs in this area of medical image classifications. So we want to dive into capsule networks and see how they will perform in comparison with CNNs. And we are hopeful that our findings will contribute something to the knowledge body. The issue of classification as opposed to detection and extraction and stuff, localization and stuff like that. We were looking at this as an end result of many stages, some of which would involve those issues of feature extraction and localization and stuff like that. So for factors, in the background, we did indicate that the biggest issue that is there is lack of expertise in diagnosing silicosis, supported by the fact that we have no certified B readers in Zambia. And that shows that even all the trained radiological experts have not been able to pass this test. But we were also advised. Hello? Can you hear me?
The connection is intermittent,
Yes.
but we can hear you now.
Okay. But we were still advised that we need to do something more like you do a descriptive research to prove that the problem actually exists. So it's like what you are saying about the B reading certifications. That is just a statement, but then we advise that we need to do a research to actually prove that the problem of lack of expertise exists. So hence that research question. Silicosis dataset, what I said was, in comparison with TB, for TB I can download, there are a lot of publicly available datasets for TB, but for silicosis, there's nothing public. The few researchers that have been there, researchers have used datasets from within their institutions and they haven't made them public. And I said we shall collect images from the Occupational Health and Safety Institute, which is a public institution. And by reason of the researcher working from there, it will be easy to access those images. But it would have been good if we could also find publicly available data sets to benefit from the numbers. Then the point on ethical clearance is noted. Thank you very much.
So the reason I asked about, and I don't know if you can go to your methodology or something, the reason I was asking about the first research question and the issue to do with the data set is, you see, there has to be, and I'm hoping that this information is I don't know where you have the methodology, but I'm hoping that this information is there in the proposal itself. If you're saying that the very first research question is tied to challenges, then the expectation is that, yeah, I don't know where the methodology is, but the expectation is that you're going to tell us exactly how you're going to do this, right? Is it that you're going to work with A readers and B readers? If that's the case, how many of them? What techniques are you using, right? What specific type of information are you going to be eliciting? If there are a lot of them, are you going to use some sort of questionnaire or something? And then I raise the issue again of collecting data, because if there's no data set that exists, there ought to be an explanation in terms of how this data set is going to be compiled, right? You understand? So it's one thing to collect data. Yes, we know there's a lot of data that is available, but this data is going to be labeled, right? If you're working towards implementing a classifier or classifiers, who is going to label this data, right? How is the labeling process going to be done? And in fact, these are the details that one would expect in the methodology, because the proposal is really aimed at you outlining the things you are going to be doing, details, right? Including measurement instruments, but something to think about anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. So I think that you just take note of that, and then you have to use that now to strengthen the proposal before it is taken to the school. Dr. Mkerebai.
I would actually say that most of the things that I wanted to say have been covered by Dr. Lighton, if not all. I actually had a question on the SEM, especially on the methodology aspect. I had a question on the SEM issue of the data set and these factors. And partly it's been covered. So one issue that I still needed to understand was these factors that you're trying to investigate, are they the ones that you want to use to build your model? Is that what you're doing? Or what are these factors for? I mean, you're going to investigate some factors, but what's the purpose? Is it for you to come up with the features of your model, or what is that?
Yeah, thanks, Doc. So the advice that I was given that at this level of research, you cannot just, for example, present a situation like there is a shortage of this without doing any study to prove that it actually exists. So it's like, from practice, we know that the issue is there, but we just need to do some form of study to prove that the problem exists before we proceed to provide the solution. That was the advice that we were given. Thank you.
Okay. So this is not really that you want to know what features should comprise your model for you to be, to better be able to predict and say, okay, this is silicosis or this is not silicosis.
Not necessarily, because we already know from practice, we already know that the problem exists of misdiagnosis, and we intended to do a model that would be helpful in that regard.
Yeah, but what I meant is that because now I'm understanding that these factors is just for you to show that there's a problem, like give empirical evidence that there's a problem.
Yes.
But the development of this model itself that is going to help you to correctly predict that this is silicosis, it's not TB or something like that. How are you going to come up with that? Of course, I know that you're going to use all these other technologies, but these technologies rely on some features that you're going to give your model and stuff like that. So how do you intend to do that?
Yeah, so first we shall
and I think that's the point also, sorry, and I think that's the point that Dr. Lighton referred to when he's talking about labeling and stuff like that, because there's a part where you have to create your data set from the training and even the prediction itself, and maybe those are the details that you might need to add. Because maybe we don't have so much time, as you're answering, the other thing I just wanted to mention is that on the literature review, I know that you spent a lot of time with all this, which is a good thing. But next time you do a presentation, so let's say maybe it's during the seminar week, you might not want to spend so much time explaining like every item there in the table. You could, especially in a presentation. In the proposal, it's fine, it's because it's a document somebody reads. But in the presentation, you could summarize and say, we looked at these papers. This is what they've done. That's what they found out. But what is missing is this, and where we're coming in, the gap that I'm trying to fill in is ABC. And that way, you might find that you cover that, the literature section in a much shorter way. So now you can answer the other part.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. So like I said, for TB, we have a lot of publicly available data sets. And of course, we intend to work with physicians from Occupational Health and Safety Institute to help us come up with this. So silicosis, since this institution, the OHSI, screens miners for this and certifies them for this disease, we already have data. We already have data and images on silicotics, or images that have been certified as silicosis positive. We already have quite a number. We also have a lot more X-rays that are negative, and we intend to work with those. So the initial idea was, since these images have already been more like segmented, we know that those that are positives, the images already exist. Those that are negative, they already exist. We shall pick that. It's not like we shall pick that. We already know in which class they fall. Then we shall use them to train the model. That was my thinking. Because I was also thinking about these issues of segmentation and labeling and stuff like that. But since we already know in which classes they fall, we were thinking that we can still work with that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. But I'll still advise, I think, in your, in the further discussions, especially the first question, you might need to look at it on the benefit. I think that you're trying to investigate to what extent this is really a problem. I know you are already conjecturing, or at least you are supposing that it is a problem, and maybe you have some evidence, but not really scientific evidence. So you want to provide some scientific study that will show that this is actually a problem. That's why you're doing all those
yes,
those factors. So maybe try to rephrase your research question, because it's not very clear from the way it is phrased. So when you say what factors, because it's not possible to understand, what you might mean by factors and so forth, and what really the purpose of that question is. So you might want to write them differently. You have an objective, yes, but maybe your question might to be a bit more specific to what exactly you're trying to do, and the methodology as well should speak to that. So that it's clear that, okay, here you're trying to establish the extent to which this misdiagnosis is a problem, and you're trying to identify factors that actually lead to this misdiagnosis. Something like that. So.
And if I can add to that, I mean, so if you think about the first research question, if the goal is to look at what causes the misdiagnosis, one would argue that would be a very trivial research question, right? But you can maybe modify it so that you start looking into issues to do with workload, right? But something to think about. What I wanted to emphasize in terms of the data set creation here, and this is a suggestion really, is, if this is not already being done, is that you see, sometimes when we're working in an area where we're not domain experts, it's extremely important for us to consider co-opting people that are experts in that area. So people that will be able to explain to us what other things we should take into account. So if you look at the images that you say you have, one would argue that the progression of the disease would be different, right? Is that really something that you should also take into account? And it turns out that the only people that will be able to tell you this are experts. So I don't know if we've already considered this, having a co-supervisor who is actually an expert, right? Somebody who understands this space. Unless if I'm aware that now you've been working in that space for quite some time, you've been working for that institution for quite some time, unless if you feel like you've become an expert when it comes to this particular pathology rather. But something to think about here, co-opting a co-supervisor who is a domain expert. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That is noted. We shall approach one or two physicians. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ndawa. I think the For the masters by research, the correct time would have been maybe 30 minutes and more. But I think it was a helpful engagement. So you need to take note of those comments, and then we need to find a way in which you can factor them in. The collected version of the proposal will need to be resubmitted by integrating those comments that you've been given, and then we proceed. So thank you so much. You are done for today. You can stop sharing. So for you, I think this phase has passed. We can have now the next presenter. I don't know whether Moses is in the house.
Thank you.
Moses, are you around? Okay, so Moses is not in. So are you around? Okay, so is not in, and Moses is not in. So these, I think, they didn't even send any excuse. I don't know. But for Malaisio, I think Dr. Lighton Peter has updated us. So Malaisio, I think, will have to come at a later stage or a later date to do the presentation. At this stage, I think we'll cross over to the master's taught. For you, I think this also is part of the examination process for the course 5019. So you take it as part of the assessment, the first phase of your examination for the course. So we'll grade you also for this presentation. So who is supposed to go first according to the schedule? 10:30, or is it 10 hours? Emmanuel, are you in the house? I know he gave an excuse that he's going into the meeting. Or Chama, any of the two of you, can you quickly proceed and share your slides? Emmanuel, I think he's not around. He just sent a message that you come on, so you swap with Chama. So Chama, are you able to share your slides and proceed with the presentation? Chama. Okay, Chama is not responding. Matthias, can you go ahead and share your presentation?
Good morning, Professor. Let me share my screen.
Okay, thank you. So after Matthias, the one who follows Matthias, you can Samuel, you can get ready. You'll be next to present. So 10 minutes, Matthias.
Let me share my screen. Good morning, Professor. Good morning, panel. Can you confirm my screen is visible? Hello, am I audible?
You can go ahead, Matthias. I think everything is okay. 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So my presentation is on development of household asset tracking, which is my research proposal. So a brief in terms of the outline which we have. Of course, we'll talk about the background, problem statement, aim, and also research objectives and questionnaires, and then part of the literature review, methodology, timeline, and budget. So also the electronic appliances are made to improve quality of life. With this also as well comes the aspect of the cost of acquiring such. And these appliances have given a rise to these appliances. They are mostly sought out for and can quickly be sold off
Hey, what is it?
for lower than original cost. So in this paper, I propose to develop an asset tracking system of household appliances through use of Internet of Things tracking device and software to detect theft, and also reporting last known location in recovery process. So Oracle defines IoT as describing network of physical objects that are embedded with sensors, software, and other technologies for the purpose of connecting and exchanging data with other devices and systems over the internet. So these would range from ordinary household objects to sophisticated industrial tools. So with more than 7 billion connected IoT devices today, experts are expecting this number to grow to 10 billion by 2020 and 22 billion by 2025. So statement of the problem. So housebreakings have been characterized by electronic gadgets such as televisions, laptops, which have been most targeted by thefts. So these appliances are costly.
What do you want?
And along with other items which are stolen, recovery is a lengthy process, especially where leads are available. Then, as applied to mobile tracking, the implementation is also the aim of this research has been done so that we can implement such mechanism. So the aim of this study is to develop an asset monitoring and tracking system for households seeking to secure and recover stolen household electronic devices based on last known location. Huh? So a part of the objectives are to track live or last known location of an electronic asset. Then to also develop a prototype using IoT devices and the tracking platform. So some of the questions which we'll have to answer include what are the challenges to recovering stolen household electronic appliances, and how can we develop a system to monitor and track valuable household appliances, and then to what extent can we develop a prototype based on the model in research in question 2. So significance of this study. The significance of this study will offer a utilization of IoT in common household in developing countries, use case of securing and also tracking thereof in the event of movement or theft of electronic gadgets and recovery of. So on the literature review, this section of the paper gives a review of the literature where we focused similar works to address these elsewhere. So some of the implementations of asset monitoring at household level has not been adopted widely in Zambia, with tracking mostly associated with vehicle tracking. So this study will address application of IoT in tracking as extended to assets at household level. So some of the literature review which have been reviewed, they include the one done by Adit Gupta and Vibhu Harit. So the article was the Child Safety and Tracking Management System. So on findings, due to the legitimate concerns of parents, Adit and Harit proposed the child safety application to provide the highest level of protection. Through use of GPS technology, the application offered a model for child safety using smartphone that allowed parents to follow their children's whereabouts. So in some of the gaps, this used smartphones. Then the other one, number 2, was RFID in personal tracking, done by Stephen Chen and others. So these they use radio frequency identification technology as implemented to maintain track of registered objects that were in users' line of sight. So the objective was to offer a level of security for items like keys, wallets, passports, etc. A gap in this approach was that it was too bulky. Then the other one, number 3, was a research by Daniel and others, which was titled "Human Tracking in Certain Indoor-Outdoor Area by Combining Use of RFID and GPS." So the application was used to track human position indoors and outdoors using RFID tags and GPS. When entering a room, a user's RFID tag is continuously scanned, but GPS is mostly employed when the person is staying outside. So some of the gaps in this one included sensors were constantly required. Then there was also another one for vehicle tracking device. This was by Fatin and Maziani. So the findings were such that when requested via SMS, Fatin designed a vehicle tracking device which would send location information to cell phone. On part of the gaps, this was mostly applicable to vehicles, and the device was also bulky. The research number 5 was to do with Fernandez, which had the new approach to, which was titled "The New Approach to Predict User Mobility Using Semantic Analysis and Machine Learning." So this one was only on research. Then the other one is also from Indira and Bhavi, IoT asset tracking. So they used the bulky hardware. In this case, that was a part of the gaps. Then the other one was also by Suba and Reddy. In this case as well, it was also bulky. Then the other reference is that of Chiana, which was titled "Application of IoT in Zambia's FRA Grain Traceability." So this applied to vehicles and bags. So those are part of the literature review. So the proposed methodology is such that we'll analyze existing tracking tools. Then also it will be a bit of a combination in terms of wanting to find out first in terms of like how many households have been affected in the past, based on reported incidents from police, and also how we can address these. So the rationale behind choosing this one has been, well, mostly addressed because of the location where we stay. The most commonest has been the theft of these electronic gadgets. So there will also be system analysis and design, system analysis and development life cycle method to be used to address and develop a prototype for Object 2. So on part of the work schedule which has been planned for to implement this proposal is shown, highlighting from November to July next year. So there will be the purchase of the devices and also subscription to cloud servers, development of the application, and also to an extent the mobile application, and also report and report writing. So on some of the cost, I can say it's somewhat minimal. There's not so much cost involved in implementing this. Then this page now, I just talk about the references. I can take questions if there are any.
Matthias, who is the proposed supervisor?
It's Dr. Mayumba.
So that's fine. So Dr. Lighton Feed will give you some comments, and Dr. Mukelebai, and then maybe I can close. Dr. Lighton.
Yeah. So my first thought, right, when I saw the title and when I saw the details, we had the same presentation from you, Mr. Lumbe, right? Last year.
Yes, please.
Same exact presentation. So I'm wondering why we are presenting again when maybe the postgraduate coordinator can give us an update before I comment, because it turns out I think my comments are going to be exactly the same, actually. I remember this like it was yesterday. And I had to go to my emails to actually verify, right? I thought maybe I was marking somebody else's dissertation, but I don't know if it's you, Professor Piri, to maybe respond, or you don't have to respond now, you can comment, but it's the same exact presentation, I think.
Okay, Matthias, are you able to comment? Did you present last year?
Yes, I presented last year.
Okay, was there communication from the Dean's office that your proposal was accepted?
I didn't receive communication.
Yeah, because...
okay, so I think, okay, Dr. Lighton, I think administratively,
yeah,
we'll try to make a follow-up, but it's a safe path.
Yes, of course, that's fine.
To allow him to proceed now.
Yes.
So maybe you can proceed with the comments. I think Dr. Mukelebai will take note also. My assumption is that actually it could have passed last year.
Yeah. Okay.
But we'll make a follow-up because there are others that couldn't pass through.
Yeah. I mean, so I have a few general comments and general comments and thoughts, and I think these will probably apply to most of our colleagues that are doing presentations, right? You know, when this thing is passing through the school, or when it's being looked at, in fact, when your work is being looked at, when it's being examined by people towards the end here, they will look at the science of what you're doing, right? And the science includes important things such as the proposed methodological approach. Now, if you go to your methodology, right, you will notice that you're focusing on things that, for the most part, would be a focus of attention at fourth year when you're doing a fourth year capstone project, for instance, system analysis and design, right? And by the way, yeah, so it's a bit of an issue here. My advice, this is advice here. My advice here is you can alter your objective so that it leans more on the human-computer interaction side of things, right? So you could argue that what you're going to do is you're going to experiment with some human-centered approach or something to try and collect a comprehensive set of requirements. So you're justifying, you're actually building up towards the stage when you're developing this software, rather than mentioning something that is obvious, right? I mean, you can't say that the objective is going to be centered around you taking advantage of system analysis and design life cycle here, right? That cannot be an objective, because it turns out that at this stage, your objectives and your research questions should be measurable. It should be linked to the science part of what we're doing here. That's the first comment I have here. Tied to that, really, if you look at your specific objectives and your research questions, there's a bit of a mismatch. The safe path to take is always, if you have 3 objectives, you have 3 corresponding research questions. There should be a match, a mapping between the 2, right? You don't see that if you look at your specific objectives and your research questions. And then I was interested in the part where you were, I don't know at what stage you were talking about this, because this looks interesting, where you were saying you're going to analyze, is it, I don't know how you're going to analyze this, but households that have been affected in the past. That seems interesting, interesting things that can be done as part of your baseline work or baseline studies. But do you want to tell us a bit more about why we're doing this and how it's going to be done? That's the question I have. And then I sat there and I was thinking, I can't remember if I commented on it. I was thinking about the practical application of what you're doing, right? Especially that in your related work, you highlight studies that are focused on vehicle tracking, for instance. My understanding is that you are aiming for things like smart TVs and all those things. I mean, how practical is this in Zambia? More importantly, though, are you able to explain to us how this application you're proposing to build is going to work? Like, how do I track it? Now, I wish I could say I have some IoT device, but I don't. Maybe I have a smartwatch, I don't. But if, let's say I had a smart TV, how would I use your application, right? To track it. You understand?
Okay.
Thank you. It for now.
Okay. Maybe just to, okay. So thank you, Doctor. So I've taken note in terms of changes on methodology, and also to center it around bringing out the scientific part of like human interaction of how I'll use the application. So on how it will actually be used. So this is a miniature, can I say a module which is specifically made with the embedded with a tracking module and a SIM module. So it is so small, up to about 2 inches or so. And then with that, we can actually get these small batteries, which more like a CMOS battery, as an example, which we can embed in the like, for instance, the example of a TV. I'll give you an example of where I stay. The spate of crimes which mostly occur whenever there are break-ins, it's always to do with the TVs, home theaters, and the like. So the device which I intend to use is it's very small, less than 2 inches, and the diameter of less than I can say less than 5 millimeters. So that with that device, in most TVs which we have right now, this is something which you can open and also fit in there. Since it already comes built with a SIM module and the tracking module. So this gives the capability to offer tracking in terms of where is it right now and where is it. So since we've seen a spate in crimes for these devices, so this is where I want to apply what is already used in vehicles we apply it to regular household devices.
So if
So
I
most
sorry to cut you. So if I wanted to track my smart TV, I would have to buy this device, right? For me to be able to track it using the application you're building, is it?
Yes. Ideally, these devices, they are not built for such an intent. They are built for I can say for vehicles. So now I'm changing the application and also suiting it to address this problem which we have. Because the other problem again which we have is where when these are stolen, the thieves as well, they are also smart in a way. They don't just go directly to sell them. I'm sure we've seen lately, whenever there's a burst of criminals, you find that they have kept these at a certain location for a very long time. Thereafter, that's when they sell them. So with this implementation, that's how we want to track, such that at the moment it's stolen. In the time when the CMOS battery we are using kicks in, at least we can know the last known location that, okay, yes, it moved from here to here. And because most times these thieves are not really on foot, they're in vehicles. So by the time they will be moving from the point of the incident to their hideout, at least would have taken note in terms of their last known location, or should I say the last known location until the CMOS battery ran out, or up until the point when that TV will be powered to electricity.
Yeah, I mean, so I know we're a bit behind in terms of time here. So I think it would be interesting. I don't know what you think, which is supervised, but something to think about here. I think it would be interesting to get people's perceptions, right? So people like me, who would be like the likely users of this, you want to gauge people's perceptions about what you're wanting to do. I think that would be an interesting addition to what you're doing, and it's something that shouldn't really be complex. I mean, it's just a simple survey, right? Maybe using a questionnaire or something. But also in terms of the usage scenario.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Matthias, we can just wait. I think Dr. Lighton has a network problem.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it's from my end.
Dr. Muke, while we're waiting for Dr. Lighton, you can give your comments.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matthias, for the presentation. And again, I think that there's some very good points that have already been made by Dr. Lighton. So just to reemphasize on the issue of the methodology, I know that sometimes as computer science students, you tend to fall prey to what students in other fields do. Your methods, you limit yourselves to, okay, I'm going to do quantitative versus qualitative and so forth. But in most cases, our students, computer science students, what you end up with is a research artifact. It's some system developed or something like that. So in software engineering, science research, that's something I would recommend that you actually look at. In design science, that is the methodology that you take when the output is actually a research artifact, something that you've used
Sorry,
and so on and so forth.
I seem to have lost you there. Hello?
Oh, yes, Doc. Okay, you've dropped out again.
Please go on.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I was just adding to the aspect of methodology. So I was just saying that as quantitative versus qualitative, because there are some things that you have to do where you're developing a system. So that development process itself has a scientific methodology for developing. It's not the system. So when you're developing a system, if you're using design science, there are different stages. Exploration is where you're discovering all these different things. Probably, I mean, we'll cover that in the research course. But you're finding out all these things. Is it really a problem? What is the perception? You know, like what Dr. Lighton was talking about. What are the perceptions of people? So you can conduct a survey. So within design science, you can apply different techniques: a survey, an interview, a case study. Because in the end, you want to come up with this research artifact, which is going to be maybe some system or something like that. So you have to think of that and look beyond just the development itself, but what is the scientific process that I'm following to answer these questions? And that's what you need to be thinking about when you're talking about your methodology.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe one last comment, because I'd lost connection before. In addition, I don't know if this was mentioned, but you see, when you're doing research at this level and the primary goal is to develop an artifact, the obvious question that people will ask is, how do we know that what you've done actually is a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You must
Evaluation.
always have a research question that is focused on evaluating the artifact.
Exactly.
So when you develop this web application, I mean, there has got to be some study or some experiment that's going to be done to ascertain the fact that what you did was actually a good thing. And as you're thinking about this research question, you want to specifically think about the metrics, right? What you're going to be measuring. Is it the usability? Is it the usefulness, for instance?
Okay.
And this applies to everybody who's going to be developing a piece of software, I suppose.
Okay. Okay. Most noted there.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. So, Matthias, just take into account the comments. Take note of the comments. We'll try by all means to see if we can share actually this the video, some of the components of this meeting to help you to strengthen your proposal. Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I think we'll proceed to the next presenter. Samuel, you can go ahead. Thank you. You can stop presenting, Matthias.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, panel.
You can proceed, Mr. Rungu.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's clear. Just you can proceed with the presentation.
Thank you. I would like to welcome you all to my presentation this morning. The topic is, the title rather says Design and Implementation of a Protocol in Distributed Database Transactions for Microservice Architecture. My name is Alungu Samuel. So this is basically the outline. So to talk about, to understand the title, we basically have to go back and understand what microservices are, because this will give us a foundation of where we are going. Microservices are a software architectural style that decomposes an application into a set of independent services that collaborate with each other.
Good morning.
I'm getting some feedback. Someone speaking.
Matthias, can you mute?
So this architectural style is largely been adopted of late because of the many advantages that it brings forth. We look at the ease of maintenance, independent deployability of the services, scalability, among other advantages. But also, as we know, every technology will have also its downsides. So one challenge with microservices is when it comes to managing transactions, because microservices will mostly have, each of them will have a database on its own, database per service. So to manage a transaction that spans across microservices has been a challenge. And if we compare with relational database system, for example, we see that those database systems, the transaction has to be ACID compliant. But when it comes to microservices, this proves to be a challenge. As already indicated, managing microservices transaction is a well-known problem. Now, to resolve this problem, the Saga design pattern has been largely used to address this challenge. So a Saga is largely a very big transaction that is made up of smaller microtransactions per each microservice. But one well-known challenge in Sagas is that they lack isolation. So a number of research has been proposed on how to resolve this problem. This will be well highlighted when it comes to the literature review. Now, amongst one of those works is a paper that was written by Xavier Limon, which was entitled the Sagamas, a software framework for distributed transactions in the microservice architecture. So what this paper proposed is using the Saga design pattern quite all right, but also add that with the multi-agent systems. So this framework took the Prometheus software development methodology. And the Prometheus software methodology is made up of 3 stages, that is system specification, architectural design, and detailed design. So according to this Sagamas framework, when they were coming up with this framework, they only managed to do the system specifications. So the architectural design as well as the detailed design, these two are pending works. So the next slide just highlights these in pictorial view. So we see that the system specification has been achieved. So the focus of this research is to focus on the protocol. That's the one that is highlighted in red there. So to focus on the protocols that can be used in the Sagamas framework. So the aim of this research is to design, implement, and evaluate a communication protocol for the Sagamas framework that can be used in transaction management of microservices architecture. The objectives are, first of all, to look at existing communication protocols that can be used in microservices, then to design and develop a communication protocol tailored to the need of the framework, and also to evaluate this framework as regards throughput, latency, and resource utilization. The research questions would be, first of all, to consider any existing protocols or techniques that are used, and also the challenges that may be there. Then also to look at what are the key components and design consideration for developing a communication protocol tailored to the needs of this framework. Then lastly, to look at the impact of the newly implemented framework on the overall performance of the system. What is the significance of this study? We see that it will contribute to the simplified development of microservices by providing a standardized approach for transaction management. So to amplify that, by saying it will relieve the developers of the burden of transaction management, because at the moment, there's a large component where a developer has to take care of that. But if we have a framework that is assisting, it will lighten the burden and obviously increase or improve the adoption of microservice architecture. Also, it will provide a structured and formalized process for specifying, designing, implementing, and testing the framework through the Prometheus software methodology. So in the literature review, first of all, we considered the Sagas. This was brought out, I think, years back in 1987. So the paper proposed Sagas to handle distributed transactions, but back then there wasn't any focus on microservices as we know them today. Then the next is the one that I spoke about, Xavier and Limon, where they proposed the use of a framework, and I've indicated what is missing, the architectural design, as well as the detailed design. Then in 2019, there was another paper called, which was entitled Grid Consistent Distributed Transactions Across Polyglot Microservices with Multiple Databases. So the paper looked at the challenges of having consistent distributed transactions in a microservice architecture by using deterministic conflict resolution algorithm. However, the challenge is that it didn't handle scalability of grid. The paper didn't look at how scalable this system will be in an environment where it needed to handle concurrent transactions. Then another one was done by eBay researchers called Global Distributed Transactions Across Microservices. It proposed a global transaction management system that would coordinate transactions across multiple databases. Yeah, but again, the challenge, even as other papers have highlighted of this, is that we have a central coordinator that is coordinating the transactions, which will bring issues of central points of failure and things like that. Then number five was basically a literature review. Obviously, you may wonder why I would decide to put a literature review here. First of all, I've highlighted this literature review in hierarchical order by years. So in 2021, this literature review looked at the challenges that are faced by practitioners when it comes to data management across microservices. So this research literature review looked at the research papers, but also they conducted a survey with 120 practitioners in the industry to understand the challenges that they were facing. So one of the findings, it underscored the fact that the challenges that are faced in the data management of microservices cannot just be solved by software engineering practices, but rather there is need for system level support to alleviate the burden of practitioners. So this really underscores, it speaks rather to the importance of this research. Then in 6, we see another one, which was enhancing Saga pattern for distributed transactions with microservices. The proposal was to use Redis as a memory cache. So if there are transactions to be worked on, these will be put in Redis. If there is no rollback, then these transactions will be committed to the database. The only challenge that can be foreseen there is, again, lack of isolation, because if there is a transaction that is in the cache, then another microservice may pick that data and probably change the state of the data. So the methodology is largely design science research, which will be done in 3 stages. The exploratory stage, where the literature review will continue, and then this would have to be conceptualized. An artifact will need to be developed to use the protocol. Then there will be needs to evaluate the protocol. That's the timeline, the anticipated budget, and those are the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lungu. Dr. Lighton, you can proceed, and then Dr. Mkeleba will give his comments.
I'm going to ask if you can hear me, because I just switched devices. Can you hear me?
Yes, Doc, I can, yes.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. Quite interesting that we have a completely different focus area this time around. You see, it sounds interesting, but my concern, right, or my very first comment is tied to what you're proposing. You know, very bold move here. You're saying you're proposing a new protocol. It's a good thing that you're proposing this, but I think the issue that one immediately would point out is the fact that microservices are extremely popular. Because they are popular, there are a number of people that are obviously working in this space. So long and short end of it here is, if you look at there's obviously a broad spectrum of protocols that are currently used, right? Are we really sure that we are going to, and you want to think about the evaluation here, are we really sure that we are going to get something positive out of what we are doing relative to what already exists? So if you're saying you're going to evaluate a protocol, for instance, one would argue that you're going to look at some of the things that you highlighted, like you were stating things like you want to is it simplify development or relieve or lighten the burden of developers or something, or improve the adoption. You're obviously going to have to do this comparison between the protocol you're proposing and already existing protocols, right? Is it going to be an easy thing? How sure are we that that we are going to do a good enough job, if you know what I mean? Because typically these sort of things like protocols would be the responsibility of like a technical working group or something, a group of individuals that would be actively working in this space. So that would be my first comment here. And then more importantly though, because this is what ultimately the examiners are going to be interested in, is how are you evaluating this? Because in your methodology, you're just saying you're going to evaluate this. How are you going to evaluate the protocol itself? So maybe I can leave it at that. I think the presentation is good. I mean, I was able to follow through with this, even though I'm not really an expert when it comes to this space. But my concern is really more to do with the fact that you're proposing something novel, something that perhaps a lot more experts have dedicated a lot of time towards. And then obviously the evaluation part. Thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe you can maybe start with giving us examples of protocols, right? My immediate thought here is obvious protocols that would be used in a microservice architecture would be plain old HTTPS or HTTP, things like RESTful APIs and all those things. Or are we talking about different types of protocols? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think one protocol that is commonly used in this is, for example, the two-phase protocol, where there is a central server that would more like query the colleagues if they are ready to commit a particular transaction. So if everyone involved gives a green light, then the central server will say commit. Then that commit will be done to all of them. Now, two-phase, the challenge with two-phase has been that it works well for homogeneous databases. Like if everyone is using the same database, they need to work. But in the case of microservices, you find that you've got polyglot databases where each microservice is using its own database. So basically, if you had followed, I mentioned that this is a framework, and it's not like the protocol will work on its own in isolation. Rather, it would have to fit in the overall Sagamas framework. Yeah, and then when it comes to evaluation, I think these will become more clear as we get along. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, something to think about, because in as much as you're working towards a discourse, right, a dissertation, nobody expects you to come up with anything novel, but the expectation is that if there are already, approaches, if we can call them that, or protocols, if that's the phrase you're using, that already exists, then the expectation is there's going to be a comparison at the end, and we want to maybe carefully think about how we are going to conduct this comparison. A bit difficult in your case because this will have to be an expert evaluation strategy, right? You have to look at developers that actually implement software using microservices. You can't run away from that. So you probably want to seriously think about this. There's still time to think about this anyway. But thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Doctor.
Dr. Mkeleba, you can proceed.
Okay, so thanks Sam for your presentation. Probably the part that bypassed me a bit was you said you have this Sagamas framework and that they've only done the literature review. Oh no, I don't know. What did you say? Requirements analysis or something like that.
The specifications. They
Yeah,
had
the
worked on the
specification.
system specification, yes.
Okay, so my question there is, when was this done and who's been working on it, or at least who worked on it? Maybe I missed it. You might have mentioned it, but I missed it.
Okay, this was done by, it was presented at an international conference in software engineering research and innovation. That was in 2018. So it was done by a group of researchers from Mexico.
Okay, and then they left that as future directions for research. This aspect of coming up with the architecture and so forth.
Sure, yes.
And you've tried to check that there's not any works that they're probably doing in that direction.
To the best of my knowledge, I've tried.
Okay, because well, it could be they're working on it, but anyway, it's yeah, if it was left in that, because you know, like Dr. Light had mentioned that it's something quite big, and if there are already people that are working on it, most likely, because I know how these things work, if there's something that you're trying to propose, people start with a visionary paper, and then they will do an initial stage where they try to gather certain things, and then from there they start doing the actual building. So on one hand, it might appear like it's open work, but maybe people are already working on it. Of course, we cannot assume if we cannot see any published work. But also, maybe it'll be you and your supervisor who'll be working on it. Not sure, but this is where the concerns of how exactly do you place yourself in light of what is already being done. And like already mentioned, you will not be able to run away from the issues of evaluation. It's things that you can already think of, like what is problematic with existing protocols, or you know, maybe existing architectures. What new things am I proposing to do? How do I envision this architecture to work? And those are the areas where you can already think of the, you know, of the comparisons, of the evaluations. And you might need to involve either get some open source projects that have been done with microservices, or you involve actual developers, depending on what you're pinpointing as a problem. So if you're saying the issue has to do with developers doing something, then you have to evaluate against developers themselves. But if it's something to do with the source code, how it is organized, how the database is accessed, and all those things, then you could work without maybe developers and just look at some systems that are open source, or you know, that are using microservices and so forth. So what specific aspects will you be focusing on? And those are the things that you need to work against. But I'll still advise that you maybe at some point you become more specific. It could be that I've missed it because you know, I'm not an expert, but I still couldn't get the exact thing, because when you say an architecture, I really don't know. So you propose an architecture, yes. What would be the main things that you'll be focusing on, and how you envision this architecture to work? I don't know if you mentioned it, but maybe I missed it. So those are some of the things that you can think about. Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
Maybe if I can just say small little comment, nothing to do with your work, but you know, it's I always joke with people sometimes that the beauty with what we're doing now is it's like it's an exam. They tell you it's an exam, but you have the choice of a question to to work on, right? You can choose something that is overly complex that will take up a lot of your time. You can choose something that's interesting. I hope we can sit down with our supervisor and try and look at the scope. And I'm saying scope here because I'm not really an expert when it comes to software engineering, right? Especially the stuff you're talking about here. But from a non-expert here, it sounds like it's not really going to be something that's trivial here. So you may want to maybe talk about this. I mean, sometimes, I mean, you can rescope this and then work on it for your PhD or something, or after you're done with your master's. So scoping, I suppose, is something we want to think about. Thank you.
Noted.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Mr. Lungu. Again, I hope you were taking note of the comments. which we need to integrate in the corrected version of the proposal. Thank you so much. So you can stop sharing. I think you are done. Next, Emmanuel, if you are in, proceed with the presentation. Okay, Martin, you can share your slides. Bethias also, you can go and stand by. After Martin, you proceed. Martin, you can. Emmanuel, I was expecting you to proceed with the presentation. So either Emmanuel or Martin, anyone or two of you who is available can proceed.
Or maybe I can if they're not around.
Okay, proceed. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jonas, you can also get ready.
So I don't know if my screen is visible.
No,
You can
not
go
yet.
ahead. Given, I think it's clear, it's visible from my side. So please go ahead with the presentation.
Oh, I can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, we're looking at an early warning system model for chicken house environment and disease detection based on machine learning and IoT, Internet of Things. Sichili McGiven. So this is the format of my presentation. So we go straight to the introduction. So in recent years, the poultry diseases have caused a big problem for chicken farmers. These diseases not only make farmers lose their money, but also pose a risk in the human health. Presently, the vets mainly diagnose poultry diseases by looking at how chickens behave, for example. Their physical signs like listening to their sounds, but this method is slow and can sometimes miss the diseases. The background of the study. Poultry farming is important for producing meat and eggs, but diseases can harm chickens and cause financial losses. Currently, current methods to detect diseases like looking at chicken behavior are not always accurate and can be slow sometimes. So modern technology such as the Internet of Things, machine learning can help improve disease detection. IoT devices can monitor things like temperature and humidity and other environmental parameters that might be taken, while machine learning can analyze chicken images to find diseases. Statement of the problem. So the current challenges that are there in diagnosing poultry diseases among chicken farmers, which are slow and unreliable, leading to financial loss and health risks to humans. For example, taking point of some important drawbacks like visual observations. So farmers often rely on their observations of chicken behavior. They may also observe physical signs like feather conditions and eye nozzle discharge, sometimes also listening to sounds. Some farmers listen to sounds made by chickens as changes, also changes in vocalization, coughing, sneezing, can be inductive of respiratory or other health issues. So they look at these things, and then just on human understanding, they try to pick the type of disease that the chicken has. So to improve this situation, experts are exploring the use of advanced technologies like IoT, machine learning, and deep learning to automate disease detection by analyzing chicken images and real-time IoT data. The aim of the study, to develop a machine learning model that utilizes chicken fecal images for detection and classification of chicken diseases while integrating IoT technology for real-time notifications or warnings. Research objectives, to build a machine learning model using a convolutional neural network that automatically detects and classifies chicken disease based on fecal or chicken dropping images. To develop a web base for detection and classification of diseases while integrating IoT technology, to be specific, Blink mobile application for real-time notifications or warnings. Research questions. How can we develop a model and algorithm that will effectively automatically detect and classify chicken diseases using fecal images? To what extent can a web-based prototype be developed that employs machine learning techniques to utilize chicken fecal images for detection and classification of chicken diseases while integrating the IoT technology, specifically the Blink mobile application for real-time notifications or warnings? Significance of the study. So the findings of this study will benefit farmers significantly by enabling them to detect chicken diseases more effectively. They can reduce their expenses on treating sick chickens and addressing related issues. Another point, this can make farms more profitable, allowing them to earn more money. So looked at some of the papers here. So the first article was looking at which was in 20. This one is just the recent one, like 2023. Smart-based detection and classification of poultry diseases from chicken fecal images using deep learning techniques. So the findings, they develop a system that uses IoT by using sensing devices to monitor and predict diseases in chicken houses. The paper also talks about using new technologies like listening to chicken sounds, looking at pictures, and then they come up with a conclusion. The gaps, one issue in this paper is it had the imbalanced data set, which might affect the performance of the model, of course, and also it's hard to understand how chickens behave as a group. Then another paper, which was in 2022, chicken disease, the second one, which is chicken disease by monitoring clinical symptoms, which was in 2022. This paper discusses using clinical symptoms to detect diseases in chickens. So it suggested technologies to monitor these symptoms, which can keep track of the health quickly without harming them. The symptoms include their body temperature, their chicken feces, their eating abilities, and drinking habits. So this still had a gap because it involved the human intervention manually to interpret things like the thermal images or temperature readings. Then another one was in 2021, an approach towards IoT-based predictive service for early detection disease in poultry chickens. So the paper proposed a system that utilizes Internet of Things, spatial sensors to predict chicken disease at an early stage, e.g. through image processing. So this lacked the image quality, okay, for processing these images. So these that I've put in blacks, those are the suggestions that were suggested by me. So development of another paper on 4, development of an early warning algorithm to detect sick broilers. This was in 2018. They developed an effectiveness of technology in monitoring and early detection of poultry diseases, particularly in bird flu. So they did not, the limitation were they did not really look at the environmental factors like temperature, lighting, which can actually affect the image quality. and the performance of the algorithm as well. So the second part on the fifth, IoT-based automated poultry farm for layer chicken, which was in 2021. They made the system that checks and controls the important things for the chickens, like temperature, air quality, and food. So the gap were data ingestion. IoT devices supposed to collect, real time. They were supposed to use like real time data. For example, e.g., maybe they were also supposed to come up with some sort of data analysis to make farmers understand the problem more. Another on the sixth one, recognition and classification of broiler droppings based on deep convolutional neural network. So they developed an automated broiler digestive disease detector based on deep convolutional neural network. So the detector classifies abnormal broiler droppings images as normal, abnormal, based on shape. So here it was all based on the shape of the fecal. So they used two types of computer models, but they might be in short, the gap is that they just used two types of algorithm. There was one that was they used YOLO and this convolutional neural network. That was the gap. They might have also tried other algorithms to look at the performance of the model. So another one is a review of computer vision system in monitoring of poultry, a welfare perspective. This was in 2020. They developed a computer vision system which, like smart cameras, which could be used to monitor chickens. These systems can do things like identify chicken problems, track their behavior, and make sure that they have right living conditions. They use advanced algorithms to process image and make decisions. Then the eighth one, a machine vision system for early detection and prediction of sick birds, a broiler chicken model. So I think I might have forgotten to put the year here. So they developed a machine vision-based monitoring system for broiler chickens, poultry disease, which have significant economic health implications. Here they used a small sample size when they were developing this machine vision-based monitoring system. So the gap was that they used a small sample size. Exactly. So we go to the proposed methodology of how we intend to achieve our proposal. So the model, we're going to use convolutional neural network for developing the model. CNN model will be developed for disease detection based on chicken images. Specifically, those images, what we're looking for, we're looking at the color of the fecal. Then we're also going to use libraries like Python for programming with TensorFlow and Keras. So Python will serve as a programming language for CNN model development, while TensorFlow and Keras will be used for building and training the neural network. So image in data collection. So we're going to use smartphones, for example, cameras to get the data. So images of chickens will be captured using the camera or smartphones, and they will be labeled with disease status, health, or the sequence. Then on the integration of IoT for data collection and monitoring. So we're going to integrate IoT here. So the things that we're going to use on the sensor side, on the IoT side, because on the IoT side, we're trying to look at the environmental conditions like temperature and humidity. So we're going to integrate HD11 sensor with a Raspberry Pi to collect environmental data and utilize OpenCV for real-time image capturing. Then the Raspberry Pi will run a machine learning model to process the data and send relevant information direct to a Blink IoT mobile app, which is our goal, for monitoring and send alerts or warnings. The system will be powered by a portable this is for power, will be powered for portable power bank for continuous operations. And then after that, the prototype will consider the prototype evaluations, where we look at the accuracy, for example, the usability, for example, and the accuracy testing, where we look at, where we measure the model ability to correctly detect and classify these diseases. For example, we try to use a separate data set, and then we try to measure the accuracy of the model. So this is the timeline, the budget, the references. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have questions.
Thank you so much. Maybe this time we start with Dr. Mkerebai and then Dr. Lighton will follow through. Dr. Muke.
Okay. Thank you, Given, for your presentation. I have a few questions which I believe might be easy for you to answer. So on the methodology, so let's go to the.
Are you there?
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, can get you now.
Yeah, so let's go to the
methodology. Hello? Hello?
review, not the methodology one. Literature review.
Okay. So here.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Literature review.
Yes, we're here.
Well, on my screen it still shows the methodology. Maybe it's my network. So if we're to summarize, oh yeah, okay. So now I can see the literature review. So if we're to summarize what you're trying to do, if you're to tell me what the problem is that you're trying to solve here, what is the problem? Is it detection of diseases in chickens, or what is the problem?
Okay, so the problem we're trying to solve here is a lot of farmers are still using the traditional way of diagnosing diseases in chickens. For example, they will use their site and they just try to look at how the chickens are behaving, and then they come up with a conclusion to say this is the type of disease, and then they start working on that particular disease. You may find that one might be
What
slow,
is it?
Or they might try to predict a wrong disease that is not even there. So
okay, great. Just there. So the problem is slow detection of diseases or incorrect detection of diseases, right? Those are the two main things you're focusing on.
Yes.
And what are you proposing to do with those problems?
So we're trying to now use machine learning and IoT, where we train a model. Okay, we train a model that should be able to detect a certain disease in chicken fecal images. And then once these diseases are detected and classified that, okay, this disease is this and that, we're trying to integrate IoT, okay, by building a mobile application that will be receiving warnings in good time to farmers to see, oh, okay, we have.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. We have a certain type of disease that has been triggered, and maybe they can now.
Okay. Sorry, that's fine. Just that I just wanted that part. So you're proposing to use machine learning or artificial intelligence together with IoT devices, right?
Yes.
To solve that, so that you have quicker detection of diseases and also much more accurate detection. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
And here, are you trying to detect all kinds of diseases, or there are specific diseases that you're targeting?
No, we're just focusing on two at the moment. Just focusing on the pronunciation, castiosis disease and Newcastle.
Okay, and what has been done about this? So here you're presenting the literature review and you're doing some comparisons.
Yes.
In summary, what would you say has been done to do these predictions I mean, this early detection of diseases and accurate, and what do you think is the main thing that is missing from what has been done?
Okay, so the main thing that is missing is where these diseases are detected in real time, like not really in real time, where diseases are detected early to allow farmers to know what is going on with chickens, than just using human interventions, because most of these papers, they were trying to use human interventions and just sensors. For example, for temperature, they use a certain temperature sensor for chickens, and then they just decide to read those temperatures by a human, and then they just try to predict. So we're trying to remove that human concept and just try to allow a machine do everything, a machine learning algorithm do everything.
Okay, and you are supposing that by automating everything, you have faster detection and more accurate detection. Is that what you're supposing?
Exactly. We're going to improve. Not really fast, but we're going to improve.
Okay. Okay, so at some point you have to verify that, you have to do an evaluation that checks whether your proposed fully automated technique is better than the semi-automated, right? But there was one part in the literature, I think it was the second page, where you said something like there might be other. Which one was that? Where you said, oh yeah, here, where you say this is number 6, where it says they use 2 types of computer models, but there might be other models. So now, when you use the word might, it means you don't know. Do you know whether there are other models or you don't know?
They are supposed to be there. They are there.
So if they are there, then you say, and you can even give an example. You can say, okay, here they used this, but there are others like this and that which they didn't consider. And we want to, if it's your purpose to try out those others, then you have to bring it out. So that is important, because when you're proposing something, you don't show that you don't know what you're doing. That, oh, I'm just sitting in the air, in the open air. That was one part I think that you need to think about. The other thing is, here you're doing detection of these diseases, and of course you're saying you want early detection and accurate detection. Why picking on fecal matter? Is it that that's what has been used before? Is it that that's what is available, or is there a reason why you're picking on fecal matter?
Okay, so based on the literature review, I'm sure before I move on from this one, on the 6, this one on 6. So this one they tried to use the fecal images, but they were looking at the abnormal shape. They were looking at shapes. Okay, and I figured out sometimes this might be a problem just looking at shapes of the fecal itself, because these fecal normally have different shapes, and it's not that when there is a bad shape then the chicken is having a certain disease or something. No, exactly. So we're trying to use the color, because the color is important, and try to compare to see if at all we are going to have different results from this one that we're trying to use, because this one they concentrated on the normal abnormal shape.
Okay, but that didn't come out, the issue of the color. We're just mentioning it out now. And then also, what was interesting, you mentioned that you'll be using these phone cameras and whatever other cameras to get these images. So you'll be generating this data set yourself, right?
Exactly.
And are you going to be going to poultry farms and then getting these images, or how are you going to do it?
Yes, so we're going to make sure that we go to poultry farms and then try to take those images. After taking those images, then that's under data collection. And then after that, but we have to make sure that we have the balanced data set to avoid misdetection of or maybe to avoid the model being malfunctioning. So we're going to make sure that we have a balanced data set in that case.
So the obvious question there for me is, when you're going to these poultry farmers, whoever you're going to pick, I don't know whether it will just be within Lusaka or different places, are you going to be sure that these people are separating between the healthy chickens and the unhealthy? Because how do you separate the chicken droppings to say, okay, these are from the healthy chickens, these are from the non-healthy chickens? Or are you going to talk with the farmers first, so that by the time you're going there, they've already split the chicken so that you are getting correct labelings?
Yes, I think that would be better, where they try to, like, we just have a few of the chickens maybe somewhere, and maybe a few of other chickens somewhere, and then just try to get those droppings. We have to
Okay,
make
and
sure
the last question, for the sake of time, last question before I go is that what kind of farmers are you targeting to be using your application? Because I think you talked about, I don't know whether it is an app or a website or something like. What kind of farmers are you targeting to work with here? Because that will also be relevant in your evaluation, whether this is really improving their work or not. So are you targeting any kind of farmer, or it's those people that are phone conversant, they can work with the web, or what kind of farmers are you targeting?
Okay, so I think any kind of a farmer will be able to use this one, because it's simple, straightforward. So I think anyone will be able to use this kind of the proposed.
Well, the evaluation will tell. That is something that will be answered by evaluation, but you already have to think about the target audience for this application, and then to what extent this can be generalized to say any farmer can use it, right? Because you don't know yet. And also, yeah, maybe, I mean, you can create an application, but to answer those questions, the accurate detection and the fast detection of diseases, those are things that you actually have to work on the evaluation to see whether that is true or not, compared to existing methods, how they're detecting these diseases.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll end there for now. Oh, by the way, I was asking you this question so that, you can try to make it more clear what it is. Because sometimes, you jump into, you say, oh, there's this and that, but it's still difficult to get out what the problem you're solving is and how you're proposing to solve it, and why it is a problem. You can say it's a problem, but is it really a problem? Why is it a problem? So those are things that are important to bring out when you're presenting your work. That's why I started by asking you those questions. So I hope you can think about them, and next time you're doing a presentation like that, bring that out and focus more on, once you've identified a problem, focus more on what you're proposing to do to solve that problem and why you think your solution might work and how you intend to evaluate it. You should be spending more time there, and like spending like maybe 3/4 of your time, I mean like a third of your time explaining what other people did. So I think this goes for everybody. You can say what others did, yes, but don't spend too much time there, because they did that, it's in the past. You must just show this is a problem, this is how it has been solved in the past, and it doesn't work because of ABCD, and I'm proposing to do the following, and that's how I propose to do it, and I think it might work because of ABCD. So much more attention should be put on what you're proposing to do, not what has been done. And I think that majority of presentations have been spending too much time on the literature review. Leave that for the proposal documents, but for your presentations, we want to focus on you yourself, what you're planning to do. That's where the effort should be.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Piri, you can proceed.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll start off with a question, Mr. Givens. Who says that analyzing fecal matter, the color of fecal matter, is a good indicator for assessing? It's actually a nice way of detecting early on that there's an outbreak of Newcastle disease. Who has told us that? Now, I'm asking this question because you are seemingly doing the opposite of what science tells us to do, right? If you've observed that there's a problem, you are supposed to investigate. And in this case, unless if you tell us that you a Bachelor of Veterinary Medicine or something, the expectation is that you would actually go to an expert, sit down with an expert, and understand what sort of things they look out for if they're trying to detect early on in the process that there's an outbreak of Newcastle. And I'm saying this because, incidentally, by the way, both my father and the youngest of my brothers are vets, right? And I've actually picked up quite a bit on this. I know for a fact, right? We know that Newcastle is one of the most common avian diseases in Zambia. And I know for a fact that the best possible way of detecting Newcastle disease early on is through clinical signs, not through fecal matter. I don't think that fecal matter is reliable, but it doesn't matter what I think here. I think what we should be doing here is following the scientific method, going to speak to experts, or reading up, I guess, if literature is available, and finding out the things that can be used for us to detect that there's an outbreak of Newcastle disease, for instance, early on in the process. And maybe what we'll discover is that we can take advantage of some of these factors that we will uncover and incorporate them into the solution that we're proposing. So that was my initial thought. And I'm glad Dr. Mkeleba actually did ask which disease you're going to be focusing on, because I'd actually taken note of that question as well. My suggestion tied to the disease is just focus on one, right?
Okay.
It would be too much work if you try and focus on multiple diseases here. But you really want to seriously reconsider, because it's almost like that fecal matter is going to be the best approach to use, unless if you change a disease which can be identified early on in the process through the analysis of fecal matter or something. And even then, right, this brings me to another question of your solution. At some point when you're describing your solution, you're saying that your solution is going to tell us which chicken is healthy and which chicken is not healthy. I mean, if you're in a chicken coop here, how do you know that this fecal matter is coming from this chicken? How are you going to know that? All right? I don't know if we thought about this. Maybe it is possible. I don't know what sort of solution you're going to develop here, but it raises questions about what you're proposing to do here in terms of the specific solution, right? So something to think about here. What else did I take note of here? The labeling, right? I think Dr. Mkeleba asked about labeling and saying you are going to label this. But how are you going to? Do you think it's wise for you to actually go and label this, or perhaps the best possible thing to do if you're going to proceed with, avian feces here, for you to actually go with an expert? Because the expert will be able to tell you to say this fecal matter is coming from a chicken that has a problem, and this is coming from a chicken that doesn't have a problem. In fact, even better, the expert will tell you maybe I guess in terms of the how advanced the disease is, will be able to tell you that, right? So that you focus on maybe fecal matter that is associated with chickens that have only just been affected by the disease. So something to think about here, co-opting experts, and which brings me to my other very important thing here. Where are you going to find the experts, right? I don't think you have the budget to go and move around with an expert who's going to help you identify the things, the fecal matter which is problematic, unless if you do have a budget for that. So something to think about here. If there's no data set, is it going to be realistically feasible for you to actually build a label data set? It's a lot of time here, right? And usually people in this country of ours don't work for free. They'll need money or something, or some sort of compensation. But I don't know if you've thought about that. Other than that, I think that's just about it. It's just that, when you're evaluating this solution, I don't think that accuracy would be the best possible way of assessing what you're proposing to do. My suggestion is you want to maybe try and see if you can incorporate usefulness, right? Do we think that your potential target farmers would find this solution useful, for instance? That would be a nice way of evaluating the holistic solution, because the accuracy part you're referring to only evaluates the machine learning mode, right? It doesn't look at the entire solution as a whole. But also tied to that, I think it would be nice if there's some preliminary, some baseline study conducted, right? I don't know what sort of shape and form this would take, but something that's going to be done prior to you developing the solution. It could be a focus on trying to identify the specific challenges associated with, the lack of like an appropriate solution to detect the problem early on or something. But I don't know if you have some thoughts or comments about some of the things I've raised here, like the proposed solution, healthy or not healthy. Is that really possible? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Okay, thank you, Given. I hope you've taken note of the comments. So let's work on those, and then we integrate. And then I'll need the revised copy of the proposal. Next.
So if that's making something else, sometimes when we're proposing to do something, This is to do with domain experts. If you don't understand the space that well, we are fortunate, right? UNZA has a lot of experts. You can walk to School of Vet and just have a brief interaction with somebody to try and find out if your thinking, right, around this solution is actually something that makes sense, instead of rushing to propose some solution, if you know what I mean. So you probably want to involve a domain expert. And I'm sure a number of people in the School of Vet would jump at the fact that, you know, there's this AI project. I mean, AI is a buzzword now. So you probably want to consider co-opting a domain expert, similar to, I think, the comment we made to Mr. Ndawa here. Thank you.
Okay, actually, the school may not approve these projects until we attach some domain experts. So what we're going to do, I think, at the school, at the departmental level, is we'll try to approach the School of Agric and the School of Vet and see if we can get some experts. And also the School of Medicine also, for the case of Ndawa. Though Ndawa already has some medical doctors that they've been working with. So we'll see if either we find somebody within our reach quickly, or we rely on some of the experts that are already in the field. So I think the comments from Dr. Tonpiri is well noted, and I think it is a requirement at the school level. They may not allow us to proceed with this until we attach those experts. I think thank you so much, Given, so we can stop presenting so that we see how best we can catch up with time. Emmanuel, are you available?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you proceed with the presentation. Once you are done, then Martin, you can go next.
Okay. Let me just give me 2 minutes to move out of the office and find a secure place. 2 minutes.
Okay, Martin, are you available? You proceed with the presentation while he's settling down.
I'm just trying to join in with my other device where I have the presentation. Right now I've joined in with my phone.
Okay, any one of you quickly so that we don't waste time.
Okay, so I'm requesting to join now.
Can I do my presentation because this was my time slot? Hello,
okay,
Prof.
I think I'm ready.
Whose time slot was it? Is it Jonas?
Yes, this was my time slot.
Okay, please, Jonas, proceed, and then Emmanuel can follow, then Martin. Proceed, Jonas.
Is my screen visible? Hello?
Yes. Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So the topic for my research proposal is risk assessment of political exposed persons using machine learning. This is with context to Zambia. So to outline how it will go, I'll start with the introduction, background, problem statement, aims, research objective, research question, literature review, and proposed methodology, then followed by timeline and budget. So I'll start with this. A political exposed person is an individual who is or has been entrusted with prominent function. Many PEPs hold positions that can be abused for the purpose of money laundering, illicit funds, or other predicate offenses such as corruption or bribery. So just to highlight that this research is in the domain of money laundering. So because of the risk associated with PEPs, Financial Action Task Force recommendation requires that applications and additions of AML and CF, of which AML means anti-money laundering, and CF means counterfeit and financial terrorism measures, to business relationships with PEPs. These requirements are preventive, not criminal in nature, and should not be interpreted as meaning that all PEPs are involved in criminal activities. Due to the increasing strength of regulatory requirements in areas of money laundering and terrorism financing prevention, financial institutions are looking for a way to retrieve, analyze, and interpret relative information on politically exposed persons. Manual PEP identification is a labor and time consuming. Therefore, IT solutions are necessary to support to enhance the process. It is within this context that the need for this research arises. So this research is seeking to address the complex task of categorizing PEPs into different levels through the lens of machine learning. The background. So on one significant area of concern in anti-money laundering is counter-terrorism financing, the effort in identification and risk assessment of politically exposed persons. PEPs are individuals who hold prominent positions in government and public administrations or international organizations. Due to their influential roles, PEPs have potential to exploit financial systems for personal gains and engage in criminal activities such as money laundering, corruption, and bribery. So the FATF recommendation 1 of the revised FATF standards requires that countries to identify, assess, and understand the money laundering and terrorism financing, the risk to face, to enable them to apply risk-based approach in mitigating money laundering risks. So the statement of the problem we're trying to address: politically exposed persons, individuals entrusted with significant governmental or public responsibility pose a risk to integrity and financial systems and prevention of financial misconducts. The identification and precise risk categorization of PEPs is pivotal, and financial institutions, regulatory bodies, and law enforcement agencies seek to implement effective anti-money laundering and know your customer measures. However, within the Zambian context, as in many other nations, existing methodologies of PEP risk assessment face substantial challenges and limitations. The aim of this study: this research aims to develop an adaptable machine learning model for accurate and dynamic risk assessment of politically exposed persons within Zambian context. So the objectives I'm trying to hit with this research is to develop a machine model that can accurately classify PEPs into the defined risk categories. As PEPs are classified into 4 categories from recommendations that the FATF have prescribed. So PEPs are usually classified either in high risk, we have medium risk, medium low, and low risk. So these are the categories in which PEPs will be classified. So the other objective is designed to implement a front end that will allow communication to the model. The research questions, which we'll try and look at and answer in this proposal. Number 1 is, how can machine learning techniques be effectively applied to enhance accuracy, adaptability of politically exposed person risk assessment within Zambian financial systems? So machine learning is a technique that can effectively be applied to enhance accuracy and adaptability of PEPs and risks within Zambia's financial systems through the development of a dynamic and data-driven model. This model can identify patterns associated with PEPs, providing more precise risk assessment. Question number 2, of which, why is advanced PEP risk assessment system necessary for Zambia's financial integrity, regulatory compliance, and responsible governance? So an advanced PEP risk assessment system is necessary for Zambia's financial integrity, regulatory compliance, and responsibility governance for several reasons. Number 1, it's enhanced financial integrity. Such a system helps prevent money laundering, corruption, and illicit financial activities, preventing the integrity of Zambia's financial sector. Another reason is regulatory compliance. It ensures compliance with international anti-money laundering and know your client standards, preventing potential reputation damage and sanctions. Then we have question 3. Machine learning algorithm and techniques are most suitable for categorizing Zambian PEPs into distinct risk levels. So for this one, machine algorithms and techniques suitable for categorizing PEPs into distinct levels include supervised learning algorithms. These algorithms are things like decision trees, random forest, support vector machines, and neural networks can be used for this. The choice of the algorithm will be considered on data characteristics, complexity, and availability of resources. Different experiments will be tried to pinpoint which algorithm will be best suitable for this research. So significance of the study. The proposed research carried substantial significance on multiple fronts, ranging from financial integrity, regulatory compliance, and responsible governance, and technology innovation. This study is poised to make meaningful contributions in the following key areas, of which is enhanced financial integrity and transparency and accountability. So the literature reviews of which I looked at to find the gaps I can bridge for this research. I looked at challenges in dealing with politically exposed persons. This was by Kwang and Arachong, 2023. So the authors highlighted the potential of money laundering and terrorism financing risks involved in dealing with PEPs, particularly in countries with weak governance and regulatory frameworks. While this research acknowledges the risk associated with PEPs, there is limited research that delves into specific challenges faced by countries like Zambia, which may have weaker governance and regulatory frameworks. The second one was Politically Exposed Persons, Risk and Mitigation by R. Raymond again and Chong. This was in 2008. So what they found in this one is regulatory entities need to play their part in mitigating their risks, such as conducting ongoing environmental scans and risks of money laundering and financial terrorism. The mention needs for regulated entities to conduct environmental scans for money laundering and terrorism financing risks are crucial. However, there is a research gap in exploring how machine learning can be employed to detect emerging risks associated with PEPs. The third research I looked at was a model for identification of PEP exposed persons. This was by Militani Zain in 2017. So while the research proposed a model for PEP identification, there is lack of study that focuses on specific contexts of Zambia. Research gaps exist in development and evaluation of machine learning model for PEP risk assessment within the Zambian context, politically and regulatory landscapes. These models should consider local factors and data sources to ensure their effectiveness. So the other one I looked at was the politically exposed persons recommendation, which is 24 and 22 from the Financial Action Task Force themselves in 2013, where they talked about PEP often subjects enhanced to due diligence in financial sectors to mitigate the risk of money laundering and terrorism financing. This includes conducting ongoing monitoring and PEP client reporting suspicious transaction. There is existing literature often emphasizes, so the gap that I'm breaching in this one is, whilst ongoing enhanced due diligence, there's a gap in this research regarding development of adaptive risk assessment models, specifically tailored to the need of our country, Zambia. The last one is a political exposed person guide to preventive measures for banking sectors by T.S. Greenberg and Gardner. So this is a book. The book provides guidance for banking sectors on how to prevent and manage risk associated with politically exposed persons, including due diligence measures, risk assessment, and ongoing monitoring. The guidance we're breaching, the gap we're breaching, the guidance provides for banking sectors on PEP's risk management is valuable. However, the research gap in developing comprehensive guidelines specifically tailored to Zambia and financial institutions and regulatory bodies such as guidance should encompass machine learning-based risk assessment methodologies, strategies, and integrations of advanced risk assessment systems. So the proposed methodology on how I would carry out this research to make sure it's a success, we'll first start with data source. So the data source for this research will include information obtained from various sources, including PEP data from financial institutions. I should make mention that when it comes to PEP databases, there is no such thing where I would say there is a standard data set of which can be used, because FAFT just provides recommendation on how these tasks should be carried out and how it should be followed. And each financial institution has how they follow these things. And obtaining that data set which each institution uses is going to be a hard task because of ethical reasoning which will be there. But by all means, we'll try to find a way on how we can just grab the concept on how they used to do risk assessment. So to include institutions, public records. I should make mention that there are already public records online of politically exposed person, public databases, and news and articles. So after that, we'll proceed to data cleaning and normalization, which will include data cleaning, encoding, normalization to ensure data quality and standardization. We'll do feature engineering, which includes relevant features of PEP risk assessment will be identified and engineered from collected data. A machine learning model will be developed. Various machine learning algorithms will be explored and built classification models for risk assessment. These may include decision trees, random forest, support vectors, and gradient boosted. The most appropriate and the one that will score the best technique on the scores is the model that will be picked to carry out the full research. Hyperparameter tuning techniques such as grid search algorithms and random search will be used to optimize the model for performance. By all means, we'll make sure to consider ethical consideration because this deals with people's private data. So ethical considerations will need to be addressed, followed through addressing privacy data, bias investigation, and fairness. We'll proceed to validation and evaluation. The performance of the machine learning model will be rigorously addressed using appropriate evaluation matrices such as precision, F1 score, and area under the curve. From there, the last part will be development, considering considerations including scalability and reliability will be addressed. Expected outcome of this research. The expected outcome will produce a valid and adaptable machine learning model for PEP risk assessment, particularly tailored to Zambian context. This model will facilitate more accurate risk categorization. So this is the timeline of which I hope to accomplish my task. And the budget which is planned for this thing will total to about 15,000 kwacha. And these are my references. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonas. Dr. Mkereba.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jonas, for your presentation. I just have a few questions. I think one of the things was what you talked about, because I had a question on this data set. To say, where are you going to get this data set? So what was the title of your what is the title of your research again?
The title of my research
Can you just
is
go back to the first one? Yeah, I want to say about it. Risk assessment of politically exposed persons using machine learning with context to to Zambia. So what you're trying to do is to assess risk exposure, is it, for each person, or what exactly is it?
So when it comes to politically exposed persons, from the recommendation set by the World Bank through the FFFT, politically exposed persons have different categories. So there are politically exposed persons that have high categories, medium, low, and medium high. So these categories are usually categorized by different factors. For instance, their political position. Has this person been any, how is it trending in news? Is it related to any criminal offense? Bank of, when you look at things like bank accounts. So what I'm trying to do is create a model that will accurately predict which risks the person falls in. Yes.
And it's basically either low, high, or medium, right? That's
low.
That's a classification.
There's low. It has 4, which is low risk, medium low risk, medium high risk, and high risk itself. Yes, those are the classifications.
Okay, and in the context of Zambia, who's going to be using this?
So in the context of Zambia, the FFAT says any person who deals with financial regulations, they should use this. So every institution, when we come to Zambia, when you speak about banks, they do their due diligence with a politically exposed person. You talk about anti-money laundering or DEC, for them to monitor people as well. They use this system to see which risk the person is and how they should be monitored. So it allows them to allocate what type of budget should we allocate for this, rather than allocating a lot of budget to monitor a low-level person. This will help them determine that. Even small loan businesses, they should know who they're loaning their money to.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking that is that, of course, you're developing some model that does this risk assessment for individuals, but just giving context to how it can be deployed. You're saying any money lending institution, could be a bank or could be some other organization, can use this. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go to your research questions. The slide where you have your research questions. By the way, you need to make that clear in terms of the use, because you're talking about significance. Yes, you can say this, but then in the context, you can give examples, like specific examples of people who can use this. It's just important not to assume. So in the first research question, you are asking how can machine learning techniques be effectively applied to enhance the accuracy and adaptability of PEPs, risk assessment, Zambia's financial systems. Okay. What are you trying to achieve with this question? Because I couldn't get the difference between research question 1 and 3. So what is your aim in research question 1, and how do you plan to answer that?
So in the first one, it was just about how machine learning techniques would be effectively applied, or how would it help. That's where I was going. So that's where I was mentioning to say this model will be able to identify and associate PEPs by providing precise assessment. So what will it do? Basically, that was question 1. Then question 3 was talking about how will you do it. Then if question 1 says you're talking about what you will do, then I give the answer, which was saying create a model which will identify patterns and associate them with PEP. Then question 3 now is how will you achieve that? That's where I was mentioning techniques now, where I mentioned things like machine learning techniques can be used for accurate paper identification.
Yeah, sure. So maybe the first thing is, why machine learning? Why did you pick machine learning for this problem, for this risk assessment?
Because machine learning, I took it, this will create transparency. No one can alter results. It will be a trained model. So every time, once parameters are entered accurately, it will give that accurate decision. And machine learning will allow us to, if I would say future endeavors, I want to integrate this thing with financial institutions where we can monitor transactions. Machine learning will make that easier for me. So those were one of the key things I was looking at.
Okay, so that's fine, but it still doesn't, I think, answer the question why you are picking on machine learning to solve this problem. But also the first one, when you're saying how can it be applied, I mean, if the goal is really to say what can machine learning do, that's a very simple thing. And in fact, just in connection with that, I was surprised that when you're talking about research question 2, you answered it, unless I didn't get you correctly, but you asked the question and then you answered it. So is it an already answered question or and so forth? So I still couldn't get this very clearly, what you're trying to do, especially research question 1 and research question 2. 3, I understand that you're dealing with these different models. Yes, I mean the different algorithms. That is fine. But what does it mean applying a machine learning algorithm? This is something that you need to make clear. When you say how can it be applied, are you talking about the context? How can it be deployed? How can it be useful? Or what exactly is meant by applying a machine learning algorithm effectively? So what does that mean? And also this number 2, you asked it and then you answered, you gave some answers. So I was confused. Is it that this is a question that you've already answered, or is something you're yet to find out?
No, it's not an answered question, but I have an idea from the researches I've read, and that's what I was highlighting, what it will assist us with, why it's necessary.
So then the next question that I had was, when you got the methodology, I didn't really see a mapping as to, maybe for the third one, yes, I could see there's a part where you're saying you're going to evaluate these algorithms, but for each of these questions, first of all, when you're asking research questions, the first thing that you need to give is, what are you hoping to achieve with that question? And the second thing is, how do you intend to answer it? That's your methodology, right? So it should be clear that you're asking this because you want to find out something like that. And then I'm going to do this to be able to answer this question. So I couldn't get that for the other questions, because the rest of this part here was talking about, yeah, we're going to do data collection and all this. So which question are you answering by doing the data collection, the feature engineering, the machine learning models? Which of your questions are you answering by doing these things?
In actual sense, I think data collection and data, the first part should be addressed to question 1, because it's talking about the similar thing. That's what I was saying, like how to be done. And this is basically data collection and the likes. Then the rest talks about how the model will be developed and implemented.
Yeah, but again, even though you're out of, the interest of time, if you look at the second research question, just go back to the previous slide. Here it says, no, the research question, yeah, this one. Why is an advanced PEP risk assessment system necessary for Zambia's financial integrity, regulatory compliance, and responsible governance? You're going to do that by data collection. You're going to answer that by data collection. So then the question is, which data are you talking about? Because this could mean that you're actually doing, I don't know whether it's interviews or surveys, you're asking to what extent this is a problem. That may not necessarily mean the same thing. I don't know if it's the same thing you mean by data collection, because the data you're collecting, is it the data for your machine learning algorithms, or you're talking about answering research questions? So it's not very clear. That's why you will need to categorize that at some point. Say, for this is what I'm going to do. I will find out, maybe I'll use surveys, I'm going to do interviews or whatever. Then to develop the model, I'm going to use these data sets from these sources and so forth, clean the data sets. So there has to be a difference there. You cannot say that data collection is pointing to research. I don't think it's pointing to question 2. Question 2 probably will be answered in a different way, not with the data sets themselves for the machine learning models. So my last part, or which I think I already asked, because in your literature review, especially for number 2, you said something like, oh, these people did not use machine learning. And that is why I was asking the question that, why do you think machine learning is better than what has been done before? And that's something that you still need to answer. It may not be now, but you have to, revise and say, we believe machine learning can help because of A, B, C, D. Because it's not like just because machine learning is hot and AI is hot, then you can answer every question. So you have to say why machine learning is important in this case.
No, okay, noted.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Doc,
I'll end there.
Okay, thank you, Doc. Dr. Lighton.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Jonas. You know, I just wanted to highlight something very important. And this applies to a number of you that are dependent on other entities or on other people for you to execute your projects. The expectation, right, at this stage is part of what you're doing in the proposal is the expectation from us, actually, from everybody who's going to be reading the proposal is you've done some sort of some feasibility kind of analysis, if you will, that in part has enabled you to ascertain the fact that, for instance, in your example, Mr. Moyo, you will be able to collect the data because the question to ask here is, looking at the sensitivity of the information you want to use here, what are we going to do, right? You know, if we are faced with a situation where it becomes difficult for us to gain access to this information, and I would like to, if I were to make an educated guess here, it would be extremely difficult for you to collect this data. I forget where you work, but unless if you work in an environment where you easily have access to this data, like for instance, I'll give you an example of students that have passed through the department in the past, students that were wanting to gain access to core detailed records, right, CDR records in telco organizations. It was a lot easier for them because they worked for those organizations. You know, so it's something to think about because it turns out that you're pitting yourself for failure. You know, it may take a long time for you to gain access to this information, or you get to a stage where it will be impossible for you to gain access to this information. You're eventually just going to, you know, increase the amount of time you'll be spending on this. But tied to the issue of data here is what sort of attributes are we talking about? You know, have we identified? So if let's say I'm a politically exposed, now I don't know if I qualify as a PEP here, but maybe Professor Piri here. What sort of information are we talking about? What information would we be collecting, right? And maybe to help us understand, or me understand, maybe you can quickly give us a scenario of how that information would be used to determine the risk level associated with Professor Piri. I'm not pause here. I'll continue with my other questions. Maybe you can, to help me understand what this is all about, maybe you can respond to that.
Okay, so I understand what you mean. So I really looked at the aspect where you're saying collecting this data will be challenging. So if you did notice, my primary concern is just pinpointing relevant features they use to assess the risk of a person. Then once someone enters those features, because my front end will provide provision to enter, for instance, someone says, is Jonas sitting in a political position? Because that's one of the most important things. Are you a minister? Are you an MP? Are you a councillor? Are you a president? So if someone enters details like that, like yes, he's a minister. Does he have a business outside Zambia? Yes, he has a business outside Zambia. Is he associated with any person who has primarily been investigated maybe by DEC or ACCA? Yes. So those things, the way the Zambian PEP system works, if you read the Financial Institution Center provides on their website how they score these things. So they have a score for all these things from zero to 10. So if I can enter all these things,
that's exactly what I was looking for, right? And my expectation, I mean, if this information is clear outlined, then well and good. Sorry to interrupt, but you continue. But my expectation is that one of the very first research questions is supposed to be tied to what you're explaining right now, because you, Mr. Moyos, are not an expert, right? So we're expecting that you are going to tell us to say one of the things you're going to do is you're going to probably interact with experts and find out exactly how they identify a PEP. Because sometimes what's written in a guidelines document, if there's such a document, may not actually be the things that these people do on the ground, right? And then as part of that process, maybe you identify the characteristics or the attributes that are used that will enable you that will enable you collect data, right? Because not all the attributes can be collected. Like for instance, I mean, where are you going to get information about the fact that Professor Piri has a business outside Zambia, right? Is it really going to be possible for you to collect this data? If it is, where are you going to get this data from, right? So you know, I paused because I wanted you to think about including some sort of baseline study to understand how this is done. Unless, again, similar to the comments I've made, if you yourself have become somewhat of an expert, right? Because we know some of you colleagues here are experts in these areas, right? You've been working in certain environments for a very long time, such that you, I guess, arguably become experts. But yes, you can continue.
Okay. Yeah. So once again, for me, the way it is, I personally, the model I'm creating, I don't have to have information of Mr. Piri, does he have a business outside Zambia or not? No. The person who has to have that information are institutions using the model, for instance, a bank. Because when opening an account, they do due diligence. So them are the ones feeding that information to the model. I'm just creating a model that will take that information they'll feed and assess the risk.
Right. Okay, but you still need some baseline study, I guess, right? So that you
Yes.
you compile this comprehensive list of features, I suppose. But still, I mean, somebody is going to have to come in, right? And I don't know how many observations you're aiming to compile here. You're still going to, similar to the chicken coop example here, you're still going to approach somebody and ask them to help you label. Even if you came up with synthetic data, somebody has to tell you to say, if you look at this, then the risk factor, unless if you're saying you're going to use these predefined scores or something, I don't know how this scoring is done. If it's the scores, then I suppose it wouldn't be that difficult to implement. That is, if all these attributes that you want to incorporate in your model have the corresponding scores, right? Because you mentioned that there's this document that exists that has scores associated with each of these factors, yes?
Yes. The financial institution intelligence has that score board.
Okay. I mean, if that's the case, then it seems like it's something that is doable, I suppose. Anyway, yeah. So the other question I had was the issue tied to the feasibility of collecting this data itself, and then I had a question to say. Research question number 2, just a comment. It's a trivial research question, right? In fact, if you think about it, it's not really tied to the core focus of your work. I don't know if you remember your research methods course, but one of the key characteristics of the research question is it must not be trivial. It's not supposed to be something that you can answer in a day or something, right? Or by referencing existing literature. You probably want to rethink that. But how would we evaluate this solution, I wonder? We thought about that. How are we to evaluate this solution? If, let's say, you deploy it in a bank or something, how would we evaluate it?
That part, I haven't yet thought of it.
Yeah, I mean, something to think about here, right? Because I don't think we can get away with, for what you're proposing, I don't think we can get away with, oh, we're just going to look at accuracy or something of our model, right? Easiest things to do when you develop software artifacts like this is usefulness, right? So if you're saying one of the sectors you're targeting is the banking sector, maybe you identify like an expert in a bank, or not an expert, but a group of experts, and then you ask them subjective questions related to potential usefulness of this solution. Is it, or maybe the people at, is it FCC or something you called it?
Yeah, there's FCC and money laundering.
Yes, so yeah, but something to think about, and this goes to everybody else, when you're thinking about a problem you're addressing, you want to think about the complexities associated with gaining access to information. And usually these things are associated with the sensitivity of the data you're working with, and whether or not there's an already available data set. Because if you look at your example, Mr. Moyo, this is specific to Zambia. There's no data set. Whether you like it or not, you're going to have to build a data set yourself, right? And label it or something. So these are things to think about. But anyway, I think that's just about That's just about it, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonas. Thank you for the presentation. You are done for today. You take note of the comments, and I think you'll be required to do the integration. Together, those who've presented, you need to integrate these comments into the proposal, which needs to be resubmitted. We need to take them to the school for approval. Emmanuel, you are going next, so you can stop presenting. Jonas, thank you.
All right, thank you. Am I audible enough?
Yes. Martin, you can stand by. Immediately Emmanuel finishes, then we proceed.
Okay, can everybody see my screen? Hello?
Please go ahead with the presentation. Everything is clear.
Okay.
Finish.
All right, so the topic for my dissertation is exploring genetic algorithms for efficient hyperparameter search in convolutional neural networks. And that will be done with the case study on the Cypher 10 investigation. Okay, an introduction. So artificial intelligence has become an important part of everyday life, and our increased reliance on it means that we need machine learning models to be as accurate as possible. Hyperparameters are configurations and settings that govern the behavior of these machine learning algorithms and deep learning models. They are external to the model itself, and they are not learned from the training data. Instead, they are set prior to the training, and they impact various aspects of learning itself. And like the topic title says, genetic algorithms are going to be the optimization algorithms used to optimize these hyperparameters. Genetic algorithms are a class of stochastic search algorithms, and they are part of a class of algorithms called evolutionary algorithms. Background of the study. Hyperparameters profoundly impact the performance, convergence, and generalization ability of models. The choice of the learning rates, the batch size, the network architectures, activation functions, and other hyperparameters mean the difference between a model that excels and one that falls apart. So traditionally, the methods that have been used to tune hyperparameters have relied on expert knowledge. So somebody needs to be an expert in the field in order for them to know what hyperparameters need to be tuned in order for the model to perform well. And the other deterministic methods like the grid search, random search, that have been widely adopted, but they have limitations in terms of their efficiency, their scalability, and their adaptability to complex tasks. And so there is a need for to develop different strategies to find these hyperparameters. The problem statement. While traditional search methods are widely used in hyperparameter tuning and they are effective to some extent, they have their disadvantages. Like the disadvantages I stated before: efficiency, adaptability. And so some of these disadvantages, like for example, the limited search of exploration, can mean that despite a good solution being found, it might not necessarily be the best solution, because not the entire hyperparameter space has not been explored. And that's what stochastic algorithms like genetic algorithms are able to do, because they rely on some randomness and probability probabilistic determination for them to explore and focus their parameter search. So this study intends to use genetic algorithms to optimize hyperparameter tuning process, ensuring that hyperparameters that are used to train the model are the best parameters, and also that they are found efficiently. The aim of the study is to optimize hyperparameter tuning in convolutional neural networks using genetic algorithm, and to compare the results to those of traditional search methods on the Cypher-10 image classification dataset. The research